My mother ironed my sister's name into my sleeve before breakfast. That was the first thing I saw when my eyes opened on the morning my life had once been stolen. A strip of white cloth, a hot iron hissing over it, and the neat black letters Clara Voss pressed into fabric that belonged on my own wrist. The kitchen window was fogged from the kettle. The radio was murmuring the same old traffic report I had forgotten for 13 years. My father's briefcase leaned against the pantry like a silent judge. My little brother sat at the table pretending to study a cereal box, so he would not have to meet my eyes. And my sister Clara, the golden daughter whose name everyone in our house treated like a prayer, stood barefoot near the sink in my blue cardigan, biting the skin beside her thumbnail while my mother prepared to turn me into her for the most important examination in the province. For 3 full seconds, I thought the afterlife was cruel enough to make me watch the memory again without giving me hands to move. Then the iron hissed a second time, and the smell of scorched starch struck the back of my throat, and I felt my fingers curl around the edge of the chair. I was alive. I was 17 again. My hair was still long enough to braid, my wrists were still thin. The scar on my left palm from the courthouse fall had vanished, and on the table in front of me lay 2 admission cards. One had my photograph and my name, Elise Voss, printed in plain black font. The other had Clara's name, Clara's candidate number, and my face beneath it because my family had paid a photographer to soften my jawline, lighten the mole near my lip, and make me look enough like my sister for a tired proctor to hesitate. In my first life, I had stared at those 2 cards while my mother cried, while my father called sacrifice a family virtue, while Clara sobbed so prettily that I forgot she was the one asking me to disappear. I had worn the sleeve with her name. I had taken the examination under her identity. I had earned the highest score in the district for a girl who could barely finish practice essays without copying my margins. And every good thing that came afterward had gone to her, while every punishment waited for me. "Hold still," my mother said, not looking up. "If the patch is crooked, someone will notice." She said it with the practical irritation of a woman fixing a hem, not a woman committing a crime in her own kitchen. That was how my family had always survived its own cruelty. They made it sound like housekeeping. Hide the bruised truth under clean labels. Call theft responsibility. Call silence loyalty. Call my life a spare room where Clara could store whatever she did not want to carry. My father opened the briefcase and removed a plastic folder thick with documents. "We have reviewed the route," he said. "Elise enters through gate 2. Clara waits with your mother in the car. After the exam, you come straight out, no talking to anyone, no congratulations, no interviews. We will say Clara felt ill and left early if anyone asks why she avoids the cameras." He tapped the folder as if the plan had weight enough to crush my objections. "The family depends on this." In my first life, those words had worked. The family depends on this. Not Clara depends on this. Not father's pride depends on this. Not mother's obsession with producing a daughter worth displaying depends on this. The family. That warm, sacred word stretched over me like a net. I remembered how young I had been, how starving I was for one morning when they looked at me like I mattered. My mother had touched my cheek then and said, "Just this once, Elise. After Clara enters St. Aurelia College, we will help you next year." My father had promised private tutors, new books, a room of my own, even a celebration dinner. Clara had gripped both of my hands, her lashes wet, whispering that I was the only person smart enough to save her. And I, stupid with hope, had agreed to become my sister for 6 hours. I did not know then that a stolen name does not return clean. It drags fingerprints, signatures, official seals, scholarship records, ranking lists, interview footage, and lies behind it like chains. The board discovered the fraud 4 years later, when Clara applied for a judicial clerkship and failed the identity verification. My family panicked then too, but only because the fraud had finally pointed at them. They said I forced Clara. They said I had been jealous. They said I had impersonated her to humiliate her and then blackmailed the family into silence. Clara cried before the disciplinary commission in a white dress and let them call her a victim. I lost my degree. I lost my teaching license before I ever held it. I lost my job offers. I lost every friend who believed headlines before evidence. The last thing my father said to me before I stepped into traffic outside the courthouse was, "If you had loved your sister properly, none of this would have happened." Now my mother lifted the sleeve from the ironing board and held it toward me. "Put this on." Her voice was flat, almost bored, as if my obedience had already been filed and stamped. Clara finally looked at me. She had powdered her face too pale, which made the panic in her eyes shine brighter. In my first life, I had mistaken that panic for shame. Now I knew it was fear of inconvenience. Clara had never feared hurting me. She had feared being expected to earn anything alone. "Elise," she whispered, stepping forward, "please. You know I can't do it." I froze in every mock exam. Father already told the admissions consultant I would rank in the top 50. If I fail today, everything is over. I looked at her hands. She wore my lucky silver ring on her middle finger, the one grandmother had given me before she died, the one Clara had borrowed and forgotten to return. In my first life, I had taken the exam while feeling the pale circle the ring left behind on my finger. In this life, I reached out, took her hand, and slid the ring off slowly enough for everyone to understand that I was not confused anymore. "No," I said. The kitchen went so still that the kettle sounded violent. My mother blinked first. My father's mouth tightened, as if the word had landed on him physically. Clara's face folded, not into tears yet, but into disbelief. People like Clara did not cry immediately when denied. They waited to see whether denial was real or merely a pause before someone else fixed the room around them. My mother lowered the sleeve. "What did you say?" I placed the ring on my own finger. I said no. "I'm not sitting the exam in Clara's name. I'm taking my own card, wearing my own uniform, and writing under my own candidate number." My brother's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Clara let out one small laugh, sharp and empty. "This isn't funny." I looked at her, really looked, at the sister who had worn my future like a borrowed coat and complained when it did not fit her perfectly. "I know." My father closed the folder with a soft slap. In another family, anger might have exploded. In ours, it arrived polished. "Elise, you are emotional." He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and moved between me and the table where the admission cards lay. "That is understandable. You have always been sensitive about comparison. But this is not a conversation about your feelings. Clara's score must be secured today. Your score, even if respectable, will not change the family's position. Clara has the recommendation letters, the donor interviews, the alumni luncheon, the mentorship offer. We have invested in her candidacy for 2 years. You know this." There it was, clean and undeniable. They had never even planned to help me. I was not a daughter in their strategy. I was a resource. My mind, my handwriting, my calm under pressure, my ugly, useful ability to survive without applause. In my first life, the cruelty of that truth would have cracked me. This time, it steadied me. "You invested in the wrong candidate," I said. My mother gasped, as if I had slapped Clara. My father's eyes sharpened. "Enough." He picked up Clara's altered admission card and held it out. "Take it." I did not move. He held it closer. "Do not make me repeat myself." Behind him, Clara's expression changed. The helplessness slipped for 1 second, and under it I saw calculation, quick and cold. She was measuring whether panic, tears, illness, or accusation would work fastest. That expression had haunted me more than the commission room. Not the crying Clara, not the trembling Clara, not the wounded golden girl asking why her sister hated her. This Clara, the one who knew exactly what she was asking me to risk and believed I was weak enough to do it anyway. I picked up my own admission card from the table before my father could stop me. I already confirmed my identity with the board. That was not true yet, but it would be in less than 20 minutes if I left now. My father's confidence flickered. "What does that mean?" I slipped the card into my folder. "It means if someone enters under Clara's card with my face again, the mismatch will be flagged. It means the board will know there are 2 records tied to 1 biometric profile. It means your plan is already dangerous." My mother's face drained of color. Clara whispered, "Again?" The word landed in the kitchen like a dropped knife. I should not have said it that way. I had let the future leak through. My father stared at me, searching for weakness, illness, defiance, anything he could name and therefore control. I gave him nothing. "I'm leaving," I said. My mother grabbed my wrist before I reached the hallway. Her fingers were hot from the iron. "You selfish girl," she hissed, and the tenderness she had used in my first life vanished so completely I wondered how I had ever believed it. "Do you know what people will say if Clara does not sit? Do you know what this will do to your father? To our standing? To your sister's mind?" I looked at her hand wrapped around me. I remembered another grip years later, outside the commission room, when she had dug her nails into the same wrist and begged me to confess quickly so Clara could recover from the scandal. "And what will it do to me?" I asked. Her lips parted. No answer came. That was the truest thing she had ever given me. I gently pried her fingers off and walked out with my own name in my folder, my ring on my hand, and my sister's sewn patch still lying on the ironing board like a shed skin. The street outside our apartment smelled of wet pavement and bakery steam. Morning vendors were setting up carts beneath striped awnings. Buses coughed at the curb. Students in dark uniforms moved in nervous clusters toward the examination center 10 blocks away. I had walked this route in my first life, with my mother's warnings in my ears and Clara's name on my wrist. Every shop front had reflected a stranger. This time, I noticed details I had been too frightened to see. The old man arranging oranges into a pyramid, the stray cat sleeping on a newspaper stack, the banner stretched across the avenue reading Provincial Merit Examination, Integrity, Excellence, Future. Integrity. I almost laughed. The word had once looked like a locked door. Now it looked like a handle. At the corner near the pharmacy, Clara caught up to me. She had thrown a coat over her nightdress and shoved her feet into sandals, hair loose, cheeks blotched from the crying she had clearly started the moment I left. In my first life, that sight would have destroyed my resolve. Clara undone was an emergency our entire household had been trained to answer. "Elise, wait," she called, breathless. Several students glanced over. She lowered her voice when she reached me.
"Please. I'm sorry, okay?"
"I'm sorry for needing you. I know it's unfair, but you're so much better at exams than I am. You always were. This is one day for you. For me, it's everything." I kept walking. She grabbed my sleeve, then flinched when she noticed it had no patch. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Father already promised the donor committee I would be ranked. Mother told Aunt Mira. Everyone knows. If I walk in as myself and fail, I'll be humiliated." The old me would have said, "I know." The new me said, "Then be humiliated honestly." Clara stopped as if I had struck her. I continued to the crossing, and she hurried after me again, now less careful with her voice. "You think you're so noble? You think sitting under your own name makes you better than me? No one even knows you. The board doesn't care about you. The academy only nominated you because the teachers felt sorry for the quiet sister. You'll get a decent score and disappear. I can turn that score into something. I can speak well. I can make connections. I can carry the family." There she was. Not helpless. Not broken. Hungry. I turned to face her beneath the traffic light. "Then carry it with your own hands." For one perfect second, she had no performance ready. Then a black car pulled up beside us, and the window rolled down. My father did not shout. He never wasted public dignity.
"Get in," he said.
Clara moved first, expecting me to fold now that he had arrived like the final authority. I did not. I stepped back from the curb. My father looked at the students nearby, then smiled in the polite way he used with bank managers and school principals. "Elise, your sister is unwell. We are resolving a family matter." A boy from my literature class slowed, eyes flicking between us. I met his gaze and said clearly, "My family wants me to sit the provincial exam using my sister's name. I'm refusing." The street changed shape around us. Conversations thinned. Clara made a strangled sound. My father's smile died so abruptly that his face looked unfamiliar. "Get in the car," he repeated, each word controlled. I walked away before he could decide whether dragging me into the vehicle in front of witnesses would damage him more than letting me go. Behind me, Clara began crying loudly, finally choosing the performance she understood best. She hates me, she sobbed. She wants me to fail. My father murmured something sharp. A car horn blared because he had stopped half in the lane. I did not turn around. My hands were shaking now, but not from doubt. From the physical shock of doing the thing I had spent 2 lifetimes believing was impossible, leaving them in the middle of their own crisis. The examination center rose at the end of the avenue, a gray stone building with banners hanging between pillars and security gates arranged like metal mouths. In my first life, I entered through Gate 2 with Clara's card and my heart beating so hard I thought the guards would hear the lie. This time, I went straight to the identity verification desk. A woman in a navy board jacket looked up from her tablet. "Candidate Elise Voss," I said, and the sound of my own name in an official place nearly undid me. She scanned my card, then my face, then asked for my fingerprint. The machine pulsed green.
Verified, she said.
One word. Simple.
Clean. Mine.
I stood there too long, staring at the screen where Elise Voss appeared beside my photograph and candidate number. The woman's expression softened slightly. First major exam? I swallowed. Something like that. She handed me a wristband printed with my name and a barcode. Hall C, seat 42. Keep the wristband visible. No substitutions, no unregistered entry, no candidate assistance beyond medical accommodation. The rules had existed in my first life too. I had simply believed my family lived above them. I fastened the wristband around my own wrist and felt as if a shackle had become armor. Inside Hall C, the air was cold enough to raise goosebumps. Rows of desks stretched under bright lights. Proctors moved like quiet birds between aisles, placing sealed papers face down. Students whispered formulas, prayers, rumors. I found seat 42 near the center right aisle, far enough from the doors that the family drama outside felt impossible, close enough to the proctor station that I could see the identity monitors glowing. I sat, placed my approved pens on the desk, and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. At 8:12, a disturbance rippled near Gate 2. I did not need to see to know. Clara had arrived. She entered with my mother on one side and my father on the other, dressed now in the correct uniform, hair pinned too neatly, face pale but composed. Around her wrist was the sleeve patch with her own name, the one my mother had tried to sew onto me. In her hand was the altered admission card with my face. My father spoke to the gate supervisor with the calm confidence of a man who had bullied clerks into obedience for decades. I could not hear every word, but I caught fragments through the open hall doors. Printing irregularity. Sisters resemble each other. Private family matter. Candidate is distressed. The supervisor scanned the card. The screen flashed amber. My mother leaned closer, whispering urgently. Clara looked past the supervisor and found me through the doorway. Our eyes met. She expected panic. She expected me to rush over and fix what I had broken. I looked down at my wristband instead. The gate supervisor called another official, then another. The queue behind my family grew restless. A proctor closed the doors halfway, but not before Clara's voice sharpened. There must be a mistake. That is my card. That is my number. The supervisor said, the biometric profile attached to this card is already active inside the hall under another candidate. My father's voice dropped too low to hear. The official did not drop hers. Sir, step aside. The words carried beautifully. Several students turned in their seats. My heart beat once hard. Not from fear. From recognition. This was the moment the old life had bent around my family's lie. This time, the lie had hit a wall. At 8:25, 5 minutes before the exam, the chief proctor walked to my desk. She was a tall woman with silver hair cut bluntly at the jaw and a badge that read MARA-SN, Board Integrity Unit. In my first life, I had seen her years later across a commission table, asking Clara why 2 handwriting samples matched mine. Back then, she looked exhausted by the damage she had arrived too late to prevent. Now she looked at my wristband, my card, and then at me. Elise Voss. Yes. Did anyone attempt to pressure you to sit under another candidate's identity today? The hall seemed to inhale around us. I thought of my mother's hand on my wrist, my father's card held out like an order, Clara's tears at the crossing. My old fear rose with all its old arguments. Family matters should stay private, no one will believe you. You'll be blamed anyway. Be quiet and survive. But survival had been a cage. I looked at Mara-san and said, yes.
She did not gasp.
She did not pity me. She simply nodded, as if truth was useful because it could be acted upon. Do you wish to sit your own examination? Yes. Are you doing so voluntarily? Yes. She placed a small form on my desk. Statement of independent attendance.
Read and sign.
It confirms that you are present under your own name and that any attempt by another party to use your identity or compel substitution is unauthorized. My hand trembled when I signed, but the signature was steady enough to be mine. Mara-san took the form, signaled to the proctor at the door, and left. The hall was quiet now in the way crowds become quiet when they realize a scandal is happening close enough to touch. Across the aisle, a girl I barely knew mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded because, strangely, I was. The exam began at 8:30. The bell rang, papers turned, and for the first time in either life, I opened a national examination booklet with my own name legally attached to every answer I would write. The first question was an essay on civic duty and institutional trust. I stared at it for 2 seconds, then almost smiled. In my first life, I had written a brilliant answer about law as the skeleton of society while committing fraud in Clara's name. The irony had not saved me. This time, I wrote about the cost of small private lies when institutions reward appearance over accountability. I wrote about families that mistake reputation for morality. I wrote about courage not as grand rebellion, but as the moment a person refuses to lend their body to someone else's deception. I did not mention Clara. I did not need to. The essay knew. Halfway through the second section, the doors opened again. Not loudly, not dramatically, but every student near the front looked up. My mother was crying outside the glass panel. My father stood rigid beside 2 board officers. Clara sat on a bench with her arms wrapped around herself, no longer golden, no longer helpless, just furious in a way tears could not soften. Mara-san spoke to them with a tablet in hand. A uniformed security officer took the altered card from my father's folder and sealed it in a clear evidence bag. My mother pointed toward the hall. Even through glass, I could read her mouth. She is our daughter. Mara-san's answer was shorter. So is the other one. I looked back at my paper. My family had taught me to listen for their needs, even from another room. That day, I taught myself to keep writing. When the final bell rang, my fingers were cramped and ink stained the side of my hand. Proctors collected the papers row by row. No one spoke. Outside, the usual post-exam chaos had been replaced by a strange, controlled tension. Candidates whispered in clusters, eyes darting toward the administrative wing where my family had disappeared. I packed my pen slowly. The girl across the aisle approached me. Her name was Mina. I remembered suddenly, one of the few students who had once lent me a ruler without asking for notes in return. "Was that your sister?" she asked carefully. I nodded. "Are you in trouble?" The question was so honest that it almost hurt. "I don't know," I said. Then I corrected myself because the old instinct to assume punishment was automatic no longer deserved obedience.
No.
I don't think I am. A board assistant escorted me to a small waiting room with pale walls and a vending machine humming in the corner. Mara-san arrived 10 minutes later with a cup of water and a recorder. "This is not an interrogation," she said. "You are not accused of misconduct. We need your account while the events are fresh." In my first life, rooms like this had meant doom. Commission tables. Cold chairs. Adults who used neutral voices while deciding what part of my life to remove next. But this room was different because I had arrived before the lie matured. Fraud is powerful when it grows roots. Today, it was still a seed in my father's folder. I told her everything I could safely tell without sounding insane. The altered card, the patch, the pressure, the promises, the route plan, the car at the corner. I did not say that I had lived the consequences already. I did not say that I knew Clara's future interview transcripts by heart. I simply gave the present enough truth to defend itself. Mara-san listened without interrupting. When I finished, she slid a copy of the altered admission card across the table. This was produced using a duplicate photograph submitted last month. The application portal shows your family account accessed both your profile and Clara's within minutes of each other. Did you authorize the use of your photograph for Clara's card? No. Did you sign Clara's candidate declaration? No. Did you agree to attend as Clara Voss? No. Each no felt like a nail being removed from a door that had held me shut for years. Mara-san made notes. Your examination will be held pending review, but based on current evidence, your sitting is valid. Clara Voss's candidacy is suspended pending investigation. Your parents may be referred for attempting candidate substitution. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt a hollow space open where terror had lived.
It was not happiness yet.
It was the absence of a hand over my mouth. My father demanded to see me before we left. Mara-san asked whether I wanted contact. In my first life, no one had asked me that. Adults had always assumed family had the right to reach me, scold me, claim me, explain me. I considered saying no. Then I thought of the kitchen, the sleeve, the altered card, and Clara's voice saying one day for you. Everything for me.
5 minutes, I said.
With the door open, my father entered first, followed by my mother. Clara did not come in. Perhaps she refused. Perhaps the board refused her. My father looked older than he had that morning, which was satisfying in a small, unkind way I did not feel guilty for. My mother's eyes were swollen, but her first words proved tears had not changed her. How could you do this to us? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the sentence was so perfectly my family that it deserved applause. You mean how could I stop you from committing fraud using my name? My mother flinched at the word fraud, as if ugliness lay in naming the act rather than doing it. My father stepped forward. Mara-san, visible through the open door, shifted slightly.
He stopped.
You have no idea what you have done, he said. Clara's candidacy is suspended. Our account is frozen. The consultant has already called. Your aunt knows something happened. This will ruin your sister. I looked at him and remembered him 13 years older, standing outside court cameras, saying Clara had been manipulated by me. I remembered wishing he would choose me even once. That wish was dead now, and its death had made room for something cleaner.
No, I said.
Clara's choices ruined Clara. My mother covered her mouth. She is fragile. So was I. The words came out quieter than I expected, and that made them worse for her. I was fragile every time you told me to understand. Every time you gave her my work and called it helping. Every time you acted like my future was less real because I complained less. My father's jaw tightened. This melodrama will not help you. It already did, I said. I sat my exam. That, more than any accusation, struck him silent. Because the entire machine of our family had been built on the assumption that I could be delayed, diverted, renamed, or sacrificed before I ever reached the room where my own future began. But I had reached it. I had written. I had signed. I had existed in a place they could not edit afterward. Clara was waiting in the corridor when I stepped out. She had stopped crying. Her face was pale and hard, the softness gone. You think they'll love you now? She asked. The board? The teachers? All those students staring? You think choosing yourself makes you special? It was strange how little the words entered me. In my first life, Clara's contempt had been a verdict. Now it sounded like a door closing behind me. No, I said. It makes me responsible for myself. She laughed once. You destroyed me. I looked at her wrist, bare where my ring had been. I refuse to become you. That's not the same thing. For a moment, something like fear crossed her face. Maybe she realized I was not arguing for her understanding. Maybe she realized there would be no final scene where I broke down and apologized for surviving. A board officer called her name, and she turned away. The investigation moved faster than any justice I had known before because this time the evidence had been caught before powerful people could bury it under sympathy. By Monday, the board sent a formal notice confirming that my exam paper would be graded under my own candidate number. By Tuesday, Clara's candidacy was voided for attempted identity substitution. By Wednesday, my father's consultant withdrew from the family account and sent a cowardly email claiming he had never advised improper action. By Thursday, my mother called every relative to say I had misunderstood a harmless paperwork error, which might have worked if someone had not leaked the gate supervisor's incident report to Aunt Mira, who loved gossip more than blood. By Friday, everyone knew enough to stop asking why I had embarrassed the family and start asking why my parents had prepared 2 admission cards with one face. The house became unbearable in a new way. Not loud. Loud would have been easier. It became ceremonial. Doors closing when I entered. Conversations stopping mid-syllable. Plates placed at my spot without anyone looking at me. My mother moved through rooms with the injured dignity of a queen betrayed by a servant. My father spent evenings on calls with lawyers, saying phrases like minor misunderstanding and disproportionate response. Clara stayed in her room until visitors came, then emerged pale and tragic, wrapped in cardigans, accepting sympathy from relatives who wanted scandal close enough to taste, but not close enough to stain them. My little brother avoided all of us. On the 3rd night, he slipped a note under my door. It said, "I thought they would make me lie too." I kept it in my pencil case for years. The score results came out 3 weeks later. In my first life, Clara's name had appeared first in our district, and my mother had screamed so loudly the neighbors knocked to congratulate her. There had been flowers, cameras, a scholarship interview, a photograph of Clara holding the certificate I earned while I stood upstairs, washing ink from my fingers. In this life, I stood alone in the public library because home did not deserve to witness my hands shaking. The website crashed twice. On the 3rd refresh, the list loaded. Rank 3, Elise Voss. Verified. Scholarship eligible. Interview granted. I stared until the letters blurred. Not first. Not perfect. Not the mythical score my family had needed Clara to wear. 3rd.
Mine. Real.
Enough to open every door I had once handed to someone else. Mina found me between the biography shelves 15 minutes later. "You're on the list," she said, breathless. "Everyone is talking about it." I waited for the old dread, the belief that attention always carried punishment. Instead, something warm and terrifying rose in my chest. Good talking or bad talking?
She grinned.
Mostly confused talking. Some furious talking. One teacher cried. That made me laugh, and the laugh came out cracked but alive. Mina hesitated, then held out a small paper bag.
Gustar bun.
The bakery near Gate 2. I thought you might not have eaten. I accepted it with both hands because kindness, after a life built around conditions, felt like a language I would need time to learn again. The interview board asked me one question I had not prepared for. Not about civic law, not about policy, not about my essay, though they praised its clarity. A woman with copper glasses looked at the file, then at me and said, "Your statement says you were pressured to sit under another name." Many students in that situation might have stayed silent to protect family reputation. Why did you refuse? In my first life, I would have given an answer designed to please adults. Integrity, rules, fairness, institutional trust. All true. All incomplete. This time, I thought of my mother ironing Clara's name into my sleeve. I thought of my father saying the family depended on me disappearing. I thought of Clara asking for one day while reaching for my life. Because reputation can be rebuilt, I said. A stolen self cannot. The room went quiet in the good way, the way silence sometimes means an answer has landed where it should. The copper glasses woman nodded and wrote something down. 2 months later, I received the scholarship letter. St. Aurelia College. Full tuition, housing included, independent student status granted due to documented family coercion. Independent student status. I read those 3 words more often than the scholarship amount. They meant my parents could not access my records. They meant Clara could not borrow my identity through a family portal. They meant the institution had placed a lock where my spine had once been expected to hold alone. Leaving home was not cinematic. There were no slammed doors, no rainstorm, No final speech on the staircase, while everyone realized too late that they had misjudged me. My father was at work. Clara was asleep. My mother stood in the hallway wearing a robe and holding a mug she had not drunk from. The suitcase, wheels clicked over the floorboards. She watched me reach the door, then said, "You will regret choosing strangers over blood." I paused with my hand on the handle. In another life, I had chosen blood over myself and learned that blood could still point at me in court. "I didn't choose strangers," I said. "I chose my own name." She looked away first. Years later, people would ask whether I forgave them. They always asked softly, as if forgiveness was the final exam of healing, and I would fail if I admitted the truth. I did not forgive them in the way they wanted. I did not return home for holidays and laugh over old misunderstandings. I did not invite Clara to my graduation or let my father sit proudly in a hall where my name was announced because he liked the sound better once it carried honor. I did not let my mother rewrite coercion as concern. What I did was stop rehearsing arguments with ghosts. I stopped waking in the night to prove a case that had already been decided by my own survival. I stopped wondering whether choosing myself had been cruel. It had been necessary, and necessity does not require apology. Clara tried to rebuild. Of course she did. People like her are never ruined by the first consequence. They are offended by it, then strategic. She enrolled in a smaller college under extended review, gave interviews about mental health and pressure, hinted that the board had misunderstood a vulnerable family situation. Some believed her. Some always will. But the blacklist on provincial merit programs remained. The identity fraud note followed her applications like a shadow no white dress could hide. My parents blamed me for that until blaming me stopped producing results. Then they blamed the board, the consultant, the pressure of society, the cruelty of competitive education, everything except the morning in the kitchen when they laid out 2 cards and decided only one daughter needed a future. As for me, I kept the original admission card in a frame above my desk. Not the scholarship certificate, not the newspaper clipping, not the ranking list. The card. Elise Voss, candidate 3184, Hall C, seat 42. The photograph was terrible. My hair looked uneven. My eyes were too wide. The printer had cut the top of my head too close. But every time I looked at it, I remembered the feeling of fastening that wristband around my own wrist. I remembered the exact weight of the pen when I signed the independent attendance form. I remembered Clara asking whether I thought choosing myself made me special. It did not. It made me present. For a girl raised to be useful in someone else's name, presence was rebellion enough. The last time I saw my sister before graduation, she was standing outside a cafe near campus, holding a paper cup with both hands. She looked thinner, older, less polished. For a moment, we were just 2 women on a busy street, not golden daughter and spare mind, not thief and victim, not rivals in a family that had turned love into a ranking system. She said my name like she was testing whether it still belonged to me. Elise. I turned. She swallowed. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had just helped me?" The question was so perfectly Clara that it almost made me sad. Not because she was cruel in that moment, but because she still believed help meant disappearing for her. I looked at the traffic moving beyond her shoulder, at students crossing with books under their arms, at the ordinary world continuing without asking anyone's permission. "Yes," I said. "I think about it whenever I'm grateful I didn't." She looked down at her cup. I was scared. So was I. "You were always stronger." There it was, the final excuse dressed as praise. I shook my head.
No.
I was trained to endure more quietly. Clara flinched. Maybe the truth reached her that time. Maybe it did not. I no longer needed to measure my freedom by her understanding. She asked if we could start over someday. I told her starting over requires telling the truth about what ended. She had no answer, so I left her there with the coffee cooling between her hands and my name safe in my own mouth. On graduation day, when St. Aurelia called me to the stage, I did not think of the kitchen first. I thought of the examination hall, the cold air, the green verification screen, the essay prompt, the chief proctor asking whether I wished to sit my own exam. Such a simple question, and yet no one in my family had ever asked it. Did I wish to sit my own exam? Did I wish to live my own life? Did I wish to keep the future my mind earned? I crossed the stage in a black gown, accepted the diploma, and heard my name spoken clearly through the auditorium speakers. Elise Voss. Not Clara. Not someone's backup plan. Not the quiet sister. Not the girl who should understand. Elise Voss. Afterward, Mina took a photograph of me outside beneath the college arch. My smile looked strange because it was not trying to convince anyone of anything. I sent the photograph to my brother, who replied with 3 words, "You look free." I stood there for a long time, reading them while graduates laughed around me, while families arranged flowers, while the afternoon sun turned the stone buildings gold. Freedom, I had learned, was not always loud. Sometimes it was a sleeve with no false name stitched to it. Sometimes it was a seat number no one traded. Sometimes it was a door closing behind a mother who did not understand. Sometimes it was a girl walking into an examination hall under her own name and refusing to apologize when the people who planned her erasure began to panic. And if anyone asks me when my second life truly began, I do not say it began when I woke in the kitchen, or when I saw the altered card, or when I took my ring back from Clara's hand. It began at Gate 2, beneath the board's cold white lights, when the verifier flashed green and a stranger said, "Elise Voss, confirmed." Because that was the first time an official record, a human voice, and my own heart agreed on the same truth. I was not my sister's shadow. I was not my family's emergency exit. I was not a borrowed mind for a prettier name. I was Elise. I chose myself. And this time, the world had to write that down.